All right, so well, what you first see here, this is just the first time you ever open Maya. This is going to be an empty scene. So there's plenty of different things to do here. I know it can be really intimidating at first because there's just a lot of information thrown at you. Do you have a question?
I just wanted to point out, I'm using Maya 2015. Is that going to
That's
make a big difference?
there won't be a huge difference. It's just that there's kind of like a UI overhaul, so stuff will look different. But for now, I'm just gonna click this polygons tab. But the big thing you need to know is the reason that there's like so much information overflow is there are sometimes like for something you want to do, there's like 3 to 5 different ways to do it. So don't worry about that right now. This is gonna be a quick, just little overview for you to getting into Maya. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just gonna go up to this create menu right here, and then go to polygon primitives, and then just get our good friend cube, and that'll just make a cube in the middle of your scene. And he seems to be a little far away. So once you make a cube, go ahead and hit F, and that'll frame the cube for you. It'll get it right into the center of your screen. And now, just like if you were paying attention during the Unity talk, if you hold down the Alt key and then left click, you will rotate your view. So you can just take, get all the good angles on your, get all the good angles on your cube there. And then if you also hold down Alt and middle mouse, that will be, I believe it's a pan. So basically that'll just keep the same angle, but you'll move your camera. And again, while still holding Alt, if you use the right mouse button, I believe this is a dolly. But this will, it's kind of like a zoom, but you're like moving the camera instead of like moving the lens. It's nothing to really worry about. It's just like the way I kind of like to think about it. If you hold on the Alt key and you're using your mouse, it's like the camera key. So depending on what mouse button you'll use, you'll do a different camera action. So I'm just going to go ahead and take a look at this, get a good angle on the cube. And so the first thing you really want to think about when you're using Maya is your key W, or is the Q, W, and E, R keys. They're kind of like the QWERTY keys, and basically they're the most basic tools you will use in Maya. By default, you're already on the Q key, which is the selection tool. And basically all it does is what it sounds like. It just selects things. So like if I click off, you'll notice that the cube goes back to not being outlined. But if I go ahead and click on the cube again, it'll become green outlined, which means I have that object selected. And the one thing I really like about the Q key is like if I'm trying to do something and stuff's kind of like messing up because I can't get out of a tool or stuff just isn't responding, I usually hit the Q key because it's like it gets you out of any other tool you're using. It's just kind of like a nice little safety. Escape will do the same thing as well. So the next key down the line would be the W key. So when you hit W, if again, kind of like in the Unity talk, you get these arrow keys. And what these do is the W key is the translate tool. So if I go ahead and grab this red arrow, I will be moving this object along the x-axis. You can also notice that in what's called the channel box over there, the translate x will be changing. So if I'm just moving these things, or rather moving this cube around in these different axes, those values will be changing. Another thing that's really nice, and kind of to Unity 15, I don't know if it has this, but with 2016, is they also have these like little planes. It allows you to translate in 2 axes at the same time. It's kind of nice, but I would advise like if you're just using Maya for the first time, just go ahead and stick with the arrow keys. Keep it simple. The next key is the E key, and this is your rotate key. So again, you kind of get this sort of like rotate sphere here, and just like with the translate key, if you go ahead and grab a line, you'll rotate in that direction. And again, if you kind of notice, the values are changing over there in the channel box. Again, that's just kind of like the information about your object that you're using here. So again, I can just go ahead and rotate this around. And then also, you can do what's called a free rotate if you just go ahead and click the circle itself. It's a little bit kind of weird and awkward, but sometimes it's kind of cool just kind of like flip things around, see what they look like. For now, I'm just going to try to keep it to a normal rotation here. And then finally, there's the last key on this row is the R key. And this is the scale key. Oh, here, hold on a second. I'm going to reorient this a little bit.
Chris, what's an easier way to do that?
Oh, so I was talking about the channel box, right? So it has all these values in here. What you can do is just go ahead and click on this, and it'll highlight that, and I can just go ahead and enter 0. And when I do that, it'll go back to its default rotations. So I'm just going to go ahead and 0 this out. And our little cube friend is back to being, at a normal rotation. So now when I hit R, I get these little box things, and this is your scale tool. So again, kind of like just like in Unity, if I go ahead and grab this, it'll scale out in this axis. So I can go ahead and stretch this out, get a little bigger of a box here. Oops. And the Q, W, and ER keys are just really important because this is like these are the basic tools you'll use to do pretty much everything in Maya. Like, it doesn't matter if you're modeling, UVing, animating, rigging, like these are your foundational tools. This is how, if you want to do anything, this is how you will be doing it. Okay, so one important thing to notice is right now this box has a green outline. That means you're in object mode, which means everything that I'm doing affects this whole object. If I right click and hold, I get this little radial menu. And again, of course, with Maya, there's just all this information, but don't worry about that right now. What I want people to focus on is just edge, vertex, and face, and we'll go ahead and start with face. So when I go to face, you'll notice that the object becomes blue outlined. Now, if you have a blue outline, that means you're working in component mode. And basically, when Connor was like talking about like all these different things that an object is made out of, that is a component. So now that I'm in face, I can actually select these faces. Oops. And when they become this sort of, kind of orange golden highlight, that means that they are selected. So if I go ahead and say, take my rotate tool again and grab this, whoa, well, that's interesting.
Like
I must have,
the bottom thing. Oh, there you go. Okay. That's weird.
Maya can be really fun sometimes. So I'll be honest, I'm not sure what's happening. But, there's always something new. Maya can be a lot of fun. Like, again, I can go in here. Oh, do you have mirror on or something?
Oh, click on the modeling toolkit, maybe.
I know it's in the move tool. Like they look like the cursor on the left,
Yeah. And then,
Reset tool, maybe.
or maybe it was in the move tool.
it's fine.
You can create a new cube if you want. That might work.
Yeah. So if I want to create a new cube, I have to right-click and hold again and go back to object mode. And again, it'll start to selected by default, but again, all you have to do is select it. It'll become highlighted, and I just go ahead and delete, and it's gone forever. You don't have to worry about it anymore. But say, like, I need something new to work with. So again, kind of like there's 3 ways or 5 ways to do everything. If I go up here to where it says polygons in this shelf area, like these are all different tools. But like this one over here that looks like a cube, you just click that, boom, we got another cube.
What
So,
if you accidentally delete something? Is there any way to recover it?
oh, of course. So if you just do, I believe it's Command. So if you do Control or Command Z, depending on if you're a Mac or a PC, you'll automatically undo the very last action you do. Sometimes this is selection, sometimes this is moving something, but by default Maya is set to 50 undos. So if like you work on something for a little bit, there's a good chance you can recover if you make a mistake. Was there another question? All right, so I'm just going to go ahead, and if I do Shift Z, that's a redo. So like I want to have this cube back, so I'm just going to do Shift Z, which means it'll redo the last action I just undid. So again, it's a little confusing, but like I would say, don't be worried about mistakes in Maya because it's really easy to get back to where you started from and then return to where you were. Like, it's the beauty of working in a digital space. So just real quick, I just want to go over like these other components here. So if I go to edge, again, it's this blue outline. If I go ahead and select an edge, there's that kind of orange gold highlight, and I can move it just like I did with the face, which will give it, some interesting angles. So we can like go ahead and rotate around this. So now our cube is a little bit different.
Yeah, Chris, don't look like the move tool.
Just here?
Yeah.
And then, what do you think?
Try symmetry settings. The bottom.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, yeah. Hit none.
Off. All right. So that right there is a little bit more advanced, but with a cool thing in Maya, like one thing you'll kind of notice once you get more and more advanced, a lot of things are, what is it? I want to say lateral symmetry, horizontal symmetries. Like a human in a T-pose, like when we were going over the models, like most of the time the left is exactly the same as the right. So Maya has great ways to deal with that, but we're not going to worry about that right now. The next thing is vertex. And these are just points. So like if I want to select this point, I just go ahead and select it. And just like before, it turns yellow. I can grab my move tool and go ahead and move it around and give this cube a really interesting face.
Chris, what happens when you rotate vertices?
Well, if you only have one vertice, nothing really happens because it's just a single point. You can't really rotate a point. However, if I have, say, multiple, so another cool thing with Maya, if I click and drag, I get this little box right here, and that's just kind of like a selection box. So if I want to select all of these at once, I can just go ahead and click and drag. And then as you can see, they're all selected. But with more than one vert selected, if I go ahead and say use the rotate tool, hey, they're all rotating at once. You can even go ahead and like scale those as well. You get some pretty cool geometry.
Yeah, so note that what he just did is the exact same thing as going into face mode and selecting a face, because the face is made up of 4 vertices.
Yep. All right. So, and again, when you're getting into more advanced 3D modeling, you'll be working a lot with the components of the objects. That's how you get the really good details. So real quick, before we get into the awesome modeling demonstration, there's a few more tools I'd like to show you. So again, I know this is kind of confusing, but getting to different tools. So if I hold down the space bar, like this is all the menu stuff in Maya. Again, it's really, really like intimidating, but you don't have to worry about it all that much. I'm just going to go ahead and I believe it's under Edit Mesh. Yeah, it's like I said, it's intimidating, but once you get to know everything, it's not that bad. So what I selected is something called the Insert Edge Loop tool. This is a very important tool. So again, I'm just going to go ahead, hold down the space bar. That'll bring up this pop-up menu. Go to Mesh Tools and go to Insert Edge Loop. And that'll give us a little tool. And you know what kind of tool you're using because it'll be highlighted over here. So like you can kind of see this little icon right there with the blue box. I'm not sure what color it is in 2015, but again, like it says, last tool used. So I'm going to go ahead and you also notice my pointer has changed. I'm going to go ahead and click on an edge right here. And you can see I've got this like sort of green dotted line. If I let go, that just added a whole new edge loop. Edge loops are, again, very important for adding detail. So if I go ahead and grab this edge, I can go ahead and move this. And I'm going to go ahead and rotate my camera. And this just gives your form more definition. So again, it's kind of like, just think about it as adding detail. If you need, an interesting shape, you're just going to need more edge loops, or rather more components. Another tool that you'll want to use is the something called the Extrude tool. So again, I'm going to go ahead, I believe, was that Edit Mesh, or was it, here we go, so the Extrude tool. So that, hold down the space bar, Edit Mesh, and go up to the Extrude tool. When I let go, you'll see like the tool kind of changed a little bit. Usually what I like to do is just hit W, and that'll go back to your move tool. And then I'll go ahead and grab this arrow right here and pull it out. And so what the Extrude tool does is if you have a face selected, it kind of adds a face for like every edge that face has. So you're literally like pulling that face out while it's still connected to the rest of the model that you're working on. So just to demonstrate again, because this is also a tool staple that I'll use a lot for adding more detail and interesting things. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and hold down the space bar, Edit Mesh, and go right to Extrude. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and hit the W key and just pull this right out. So we got this, weird modern art thing going on here. Just going to go ahead and shrink it down a little bit. And then I will say the last tool that I'd like to go over that's a big staple is something called the merge tool. And that is used with verts. So again, I'm going to go ahead, right click and hold, get our little pop-up menu, and go to vertex. So I'm going to go ahead and select, say, this vert. And just as another tip, if you hold down shift, that's also adding to your selection. So I'm going to go ahead and shift click this vert right there. So they're both, they're both highlight. And if I go ahead and hold down the space bar, go to edit mesh, I can go to merge, which is right under extrude. If I'd let go of that, it combined both points into one. So kind of a way to think about it is, say, like I don't want I don't know, I'm making a tail or something weird. Like I kind of want to get rid of this face. I can, say delete this. Say like I kind of want to seal that. I can go ahead and go to vertex, select both while holding shift, hold down the space bar, edit mesh, and go back to merge. And again, that'll just bring them both together. It's a good way of sort of like just making sure, because another important thing with modeling is making sure that your mesh is completely, like, I want to say enclosed or like one solid piece. So you don't want a lot of holes in your mesh. It's not a good thing. And that's all the basic and staple tools. Like once you kind of get used to working with objects and the components and sort of mastering edge loops, extrude, and the merge, you can really, that's basically all what the professional use to make really cool, awesome models. So speaking of cool, awesome models, who wants to see me make something? No, just say something. Like a museum. Okay. I need something simple. A Pokeball. Pikachu. A dragon, of course. All right. If a helix. All right. I'm gonna have to go with the Spartasoft tradition here and make a table. So, a chair. Okay. I heard chair. So again, with nothing in my scene, I'm gonna go ahead and start with, just gonna go up here to make a cube. And so I have my cube here. I'm just gonna go ahead and raise it up a little bit, and then use my scale tool. So I'm gonna hit R. Grab this Y here and make it a little bit thinner. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit F again to focus, just so I can get a little better view. And then I'm going to hold down the space bar again, go to Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this edge and drag. And I'm going to go ahead and do this a few times so I can make the legs of the chair. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to like all corners, so that we have, this like information here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Q to get back to selection, and then rotate my view under. So one thing you'll notice is because of the edge loop tool, if I go right click and hold and go to face, I can now select these, which they weren't there before because it was just one solid cube. So if I go ahead and select all of these with the shift key, I can go ahead and hold down the space bar, go back to edit mesh, and run another extrude. And again, just going to go ahead and hit the W key because I just want to bring them straight down. Just like that. So there you go. The legs of our chair. And of course, the other thing we need is something to rest your back on. So I'm going to go ahead, grab these faces over here. Not anymore. I'm going to go to extrude, bring it up. Yeah, very awesome detailed chair. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it back a little bit. I mean, if I wanted to get really crazy here, I can grab this face, run another extrude, and then just bring it up a little bit, shrink it down, and we got a cushion. I mean, you want to be comfortable when you sit down, so. But I mean, really, that's a chair. Like, it's not that crazy. And once you have like the basic set down, you can actually get pretty detailed. So it's just, you really need to get used to building off of simple primitives. Like most things really start with just a cube, and then you're just pulling stuff out of it. And like I could also go back to edge. Grab these edges right here. I don't know why you'd actually want a chair like this, but I just go ahead and like bring it down. And then that's really bad, but like it already adds a little bit of extra definition to it. I could even go over, say, to verts. And go ahead, so again, I'm just going to click and drag to get this little marquee box. Select these over here, and then maybe even move them forward and rotate them. I don't know. It's just, yeah. I mean, it's art, okay? It's 3D art. You don't have to understand it. It just has to be what it is. So, okay. So let's do a hole. So I'm gonna say edit mesh, mesh tools, insert edge loop. So if I want a hole, I need to make sure I have enough information to have it. So I'm gonna go ahead and add an extra edge loop here, so that when I go into face and delete these, so I'm gonna select both of these faces and delete them, you can actually see through the chair. But again, the problem is, like, if you can see like this sort of like blackness right here, that means that's like the inside of your model. And when you have something in a game, you don't want that. You need everything to be like one solid mesh. So I can actually, are you guys ready for a new tool? I wasn't going to go over this, but all right. So another really handy tool, I have to figure out where it is. Okay, so under mesh tools, so again, I'm just holding the space bar, is the append to polygon tool. This is like one of my favorite tools to use. It's really easy. So when you go and open up the append to polygon tool, you kind of notice that the edges that are around the hole are a little bit like thicker than the rest. It's really hard to see. You're gonna have to trust me on this. But if I go ahead, oops, already exited, so let's do that again. Append to polygon tool. If I select one of these edges, it sort of gives me this like purple outline. And that's just outlining the hole for you. But I know for a fact I want this edge to go to here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click once again. And you see this sort of like pink face. That's like your preview. So once you've appended the edge and that's what you want, all you have to do is hit return or enter. And boom, you have a new face. So you pretty much closed that hole. So I'm going to go ahead and do that 3 more times. Just going to go to mesh tools, append to polygon tool. Going to click here, click there. There's the preview, gonna hit enter. And there. So another cool thing, if you're getting really tired and like you're gonna use the same tool over and over again, instead of having to like press this, search through all the menus, be like, oh, there it is again. One cool thing that Maya does that'll save you a lot of time is the G key. Now what the G key does is the last tool you have used. So I know for a fact that I will be using the append tool 2 more times. So if I just go ahead and hit the G key, it'll load up again. So all I have to do is click here, click there, and then hit enter. And then that tool is done. And again, since it's the last tool I've used, I can just hit the G key, click here, click there, enter. Boom, we have a hole in our chair. So you just have to realize that, say like, oh wait, like say that you were halfway through that and went, I want to go ahead and add an extrusion here. So I go to edit mesh, or yeah, extrude, and you're like, ta-da, amazing chair. But like you forgot you needed to append another hole. If you hit G again, it's going to try to run an extrude instead of the append tool because extrude is the last tool you use. I mean, that's a little more advanced, but like once you start getting used to Maya and the workflow, it'll really save you a whole lot of time. So. Does anyone have any questions? I know I went through a whole lot. I mean, what? Okay. I guess I have to subdivide now. So one thing you notice is like when I showed you those 2 models, this is like a low poly model. So it's like it's very hard edge. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just how it is. But if I go ahead and select this, there's a new menu, or rather a menu we haven't gone over yet, which is mesh. Kind of a way to think about it is edit mesh and mesh tools deal with components, whereas mesh deals with the whole object. So if I go ahead and select mesh, I believe this is what you're talking about, but I can go to smooth. And what smooth does is add more division. So if I go ahead and run that, boom, we now have a high poly chair. So, and again, if I select this and hit the G key, even more. So, so use the smooth tool sparingly, because once you use that like 3 or 4 times, you'll crash your computer. So you have to be really careful with that. I think this is beautiful. I mean, I don't know if you guys want me to do anything else.
No. Chris, I'm recording. Don't do it.
All right. Unfortunately, for prosperity, I can't smooth the chair again. So, okay, here, I'll go ahead, file. Okay, so this is the other important thing too. Maya will crash on you. There's no way around it. So you're always going to want to save often. And it's really easy too. So all you have to do is Control or Command S. And if it's the first time you're saving, it'll pop up this window, because before you save a scene, it's always going to be save as. So I can go ahead and click desktop, go in here, and say like sweet, oops, hold on, I'm not used to this keyboard. Sweet, awesome chair, and then save. And then if you're using the free student version, this window pop-up will happen. It's not a big deal, just hit continue, and it'll save, and that's it. And then so while you're working, say like for whatever reason, you wanted to, I don't know, I gotta figure out something to do. Face. Like you want this to go down now, because you're like, awesome. All you have to do is go ahead and save. Again, if you're using the student version, this pop up, just hit continue, boom, saved. So, it's just, once I do something kind of major, I always save, because you never know when Maya's gonna crash. It just happens. And not only that, but sometimes a good way to think about it is if you save and then you work for a long time, but like something doesn't feel right, you kind of have that save as a backup too. But again, that's a bit of a more advanced thing. So again, I would say if you're starting with Maya, you're just getting into it, start with your basic primitives, just work on extrudes, work on putting in edge loops, moving components around, just kind of, again, looking at a concept of something and working your best to try to build it with simple stuff. So, any other questions? Concerns? Anybody confused about anything? Yeah. All right.
Oh yeah, and you guys will need a 3-mouse button, or 3-button mouse.
Yeah.
For both Unity and Maya, because you need that. The scrolly wheel acts as a middle mouse click. So if you don't have one, then pick one up, and then you can follow along with these tutorials.
Yeah, like it's really impossible to do 3D work without a 3-button mouse. Yes.
I was just wondering something about the insert edge loop tool. Is it supposed to create an edge that wraps all the way around?
Yeah.
Because whenever I do it, it will only do it across like 2 or 3
So
surfaces.
that's probably because you have either an n-gon or a star point. So but here, I'll have to get a new cube here. So go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. It's good to know. So when you're working with models, you really want to keep stuff quads or triangles, because in the long run, when stuff's rendered, it's going to be triangles anyway. And quads are they're clean and beautiful, really. But so like I'll take this right here, and I'm going to go ahead and let's see. Go ahead and insert an edge loop here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and delete it. And then now if I go into vertex, you'll notice that I still have these verts here. And what I just did is I made a whole bunch of n-gons. And what that means is they're polygons with more than 4 sides. And they're just not good. Rendering just doesn't like them. They're not that good to work with. When you get into rigging and animation, they're really like tricky to deform, because again, since everything turns into triangles, this face right here has to turn into triangles, and you don't know how the rendering system is going to turn it into triangles. So like maybe it'll do something like here, and then here, and it'll just break up really weird. So it's not good. So like what'll happen is if I try to go to do another edge loop, if I click here, it's only going to do it on this one side because this one side is a quad, whereas these two the top and the bottom are now n-gons. So it doesn't know how to. It's basically when you run an edge loop, it just looks for loops, and if it doesn't see a loop, it's just going to stop. So that was all I had planned. I can.
Is there a proper way to delete an edge?
Yeah. So if you want to get an edge here, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and undo a lot. So we're back here with an edge. So what we can do, another cool thing to do is if you double click an edge, it'll highlight, again, your edge loop. So you'll be working a lot with those. So what I can do is I believe, is it under Mesh Tools? Maybe not. Edit Mesh. Oh, here we go. So you'll see it says Delete Edge Vertex. So if you want to get rid of a whole edge or edge loop, all you need to do is hold down the space bar, Edit Mesh, Delete Edge Vertex. So that will also get rid of your edges and your vertices because what was making that an n-gon was the leftover verts. So then now, if we want to run another edge loop, here, I just go ahead and click. It'll run now because they're all quads again. So, anything else? So again, it is really like there's a lot going on. I would say just focus on like one thing at a time, learn it, get good at it, and then move on to the next thing. Yeah.
Have you ever done this? I've seen a lot of people do this. Like I've created things in 3ds Max and I've created stuff in ZBrush, but I know what a lot of people like to do is make the low poly base mesh in Maya and then import it to ZBrush. Have you ever tried doing that?
Yeah, I have a few times. That's a little out there.
I know that's a little.
It's fine. It's a little out there for this talk, but that's one thing you can do is basically you can model like, say we'll try another tool. It usually doesn't work that well, but I'll just go ahead and go to Mesh, and I go to Reduce. Basically, it's the opposite of smooth. So we'll try that out. We'll go ahead and use the G key to run it again. Oh, G key and run it again. So there. It's even better now with knife legs. So if you wanted to, you could say like, hey, file or file export selection. And that's where it'll allow you to export what's called an object file. And you can import those into other 3D programs because object files are like the generic file. And then when you load that into, say, ZBrush or Mudbox, it'll see that. It'll be able to load up, and then you can just go ahead, subdivide in that program, sculpt up, and change things. And then what you can do then is you can take that high poly sculpt, and again, going back into texturing, you'll take your high poly sculpt and bake it in as a normal map. So like if you remember that like lamppost that was in the texturing thing, like that lamppost is probably flat, but it looked like it had rocks because of the normal map, which was probably sculpted in, say, ZBrush or Mudbox or something like that. So, like, there's a whole lot to learn and a lot of crazy stuff. Yes?
Can I jump in with ZBrush knowledge?
I mean...
We have 3 minutes.
Yeah. Is there anything else?
We can talk about it.
Okay.
All right, so thank you for paying attention, everyone. Like I said, you just got to really keep at it. So.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Next week we have our programming talk, and then the weekend following that, so not this weekend but next, we have our first game jam. Yeah. So everybody get excited.
And just a reminder, we will have the like help sessions before it too.
Yeah.
So.
And like, don't worry if you like weren't able to follow along or anything. Like, you really learn on the fly at game jams. That's what they're all about. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
And then week after that, for talks also is the week after that is the design talk, and then after that we have an audio talk with the guest who graduated last year. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Yay.
Oh. He's actually pretty new. His title's called Outreach Specialist, but he helps like organize a bunch of events and like.
How do I stop this?
No.
How do I stop Camtasia?
I really want to get the lights. Yeah. Chris, hit the red like.
This?
Yep. All right.